Saw science has changed dramatically over the last few years. This is the typical saw you would have got in the 70s, the 80s, and even the 90s. You would have found it would have been about 2 feet long, normally a wooden handle, which is bolted through, and you would have found that you had to sharpen it at least once a week, which isn't great. And even then, back then, it would have cost you a small fortune to buy a saw, so you would have looked after it. Now, with modern manufacturing methods and reliability, saws have changed massively. They tend to have different metals used in the actual blade itself and plastics in the handle just to make them more comfortable to use. When it comes to the blade technology, this is where the biggest advances have come. On this one here, it gives you a full rundown of exactly what you've got in the saw. So, for instance, here we have 22 inches, which is the length of the saw, 550 millimeters. 7 TPI. Now, this is 7 teeth per inch, and 8 points, which is 8 points per inch. Now this would be a first fix saw, so it would be for roofing timbers, stuff that's not going to be seen. Obviously it cuts through that, and the rate of cut is very, very swift indeed. You've got much larger teeth in there and much larger gaps, which gives more clearance as you're using it over the work. So something like cutting a log like this, it would get through there like butter. Moving on to what I'd call a fine finish or a finish saw, you'd find that the numbers that you have here will be a lot higher, so 11 TPI and 12 points. That's 11 teeth per inch and 12 points. And again, this is a 22-inch saw. This is one that we've robbed from the north. But this is the kind of thing that you would use for finish work, so a bit of skirting, a bit of architraves, or perhaps a little bit of tongue groove paint. Now there are some minor differences between these Stanley saws that we've got here. This one here is a double ground saw, and you can see it's got 1 and 2 written there just by the point, which means it's been sharpened on 2 sides of the point. Now this saw obviously just cuts when you're pushing it. Now these saws here, the Stanley saw and the Stanley Fatmax saw, are slightly different because these are triple ground. So you'll find that the blade is actually sharpened on 3 surfaces. So as well as cutting on the push, when you return the blade, it also cuts as well. The makeup of the saws, obviously it's the metal saw. You've got a bioplastic handle here, which is bolted to the blade on the Stanley saw. On the Stanley Fatmax, you'll find that it's actually bolted the handle to the main shaft of the saw there, but it's also welded as well. And all the teeth on the Fatmax range are induction hardened to make them last a lot longer. Now all of the saws mentioned here are universal, so they actually cut with the grain, so if you're cutting down a piece of wood like that, or across the grain, true universal saws. It's not only on the Stanley Fatmax panel saw that you get the triple ground induction hardened teeth, you also get them on the full range of our specialist saws.